Hello everyone, welcome to Data Meeting 4 for Group 6. My name is Eli, and the rest of my group is Christopher, Noel, and Angela. We met on Friday at 5:30 between me, Noel, and Christopher, and then on Monday at 5 o'clock between me, Noel, Christopher, and Angela. We went to have our whole group there for our second meeting. We met via Google Hangout. I was our facilitator, Noel and Angela were our recorders, and Christopher was our timekeeper. Our agenda probably looks similar to just about every other group's, but we had our welcome, we reviewed our objectives from our last meeting, we talked about the next steps, so what we were supposed to do for this meeting to make sure that everyone was on the same page. We discussed our thoughts regarding learning gaps and instructional gaps. We just wanted to make sure that we knew how important it was for our classrooms to be able to connect the two, as we don't want to blame the kids for something that could be our mistakes. Next, we wanted to start working on our sheets, making sure that we get all of our information done. Then we talked about our next steps for the meeting, because we broke it up into two meetings. Then we talked about what worked well and what didn't towards the end of our second meeting. So our objectives, we want to link teacher-specific learning gaps to instructional gaps. Obviously, this is the most important part of Data Meeting 4. We want to set target learning goals for each class, set evaluation metrics, and then set a date for our next meeting, which will be Friday at 5 o'clock. So we'll start with Noel's data. She presented first. So for Noel, she was working with a 9th grade math class. Noel is a special education teacher. Her exploratory question asks what additional supports will be provided during high school instruction that will improve student scores. She wanted to make sure that she connected her learning gaps to her instructional gaps. So as the three of our practicing teachers' data goes, Noel has the most data, as she used PARCC data when me and Angela used more specific content data. So for Noel, she came up with a whole bunch of different options, ranging from test comprehension to defining variables or vocabulary to solving systems equations, defining patterns, looking at daily assignment sheets, and then another test. So the major thing that Noel came up with, and we came up with her, was that her students aren't doing well if there's no direct instruction or no practice with direct instruction. So that kind of goes back to her exploratory question of what additional supports are needed during high school that will improve student scores. So going forward, I'm sure we'll talk about this more next week with our with Data Meeting 5. But Noel, her smart learning goals is by the end of the marking period, 80% of students will obtain a 60% higher in Algebra 1. By the end of the year, 90% of students will obtain a C or higher in Algebra 1. It's important to note that Noel's students are special ed, or has a lot of special education students, and that their proficiency is right around 50-60% right about now. So she's looking to boost it up 20 to 30%. Next, we will move on to my data. I teach AP Government, and for my data, I was looking more at a smaller unit, so I don't have as much data as Noel does. So for mine, I had 3 assignments, and I wanted to connect those assignments to what was happening with my instruction. And the main thing we came up with for me was that my students did not do well with the vocabulary. There was no pre-teaching or modified text with more difficult text with unfamiliar vocabulary. Content that was not specifically taught in class, so if there was an independent learning activity or stuff from the textbook, students did not do as well. We saw it specifically with our end-of-unit quiz, where content not covered in the book or not covered in class, was only in the textbook, was not tested well upon by the students. And again, it comes back, and my last one comes back to content in class versus independent work. So my SMART target learning goal was 80% of students will score at least a 70% or higher on the end of unit assessment, and 75% of students will score a 3 or above on the AP exam. For my students, mine are all AP students, so to get in the class, they're supposed to be well above grade level. Unfortunately, what we have noticed, and that this isn't just my class, but at my school, is that students were pushed into the class when they may not have been ready for it. So these numbers may seem low for an AP class, but in reality, I'm looking more around the normal score is about a 55 to 63%. So trying to boost it up about 10% or so. Then last thing we talked about, or the last person we talked about, was Angela's data. Angela teaches elementary school, and she's focused on math. So for Angela, it again came back to students not performing well when there was no direct instruction or no specific practice with the discussion. Because Angela missed data meeting 1, we all made comments on hers. You see Christopher and my comments. And that was to kind of help get our conversation going as we were working. So Angela's goal is by the end of the unit, 50% of students will score a 70% or higher on the assessment. And she's going to use it through unit assessment, classwork, and quizzes. Again, with Angela, she has very, very low-level students. She told us that her proficiency level was right around 30%. So by trying to get 50% to 70% or higher, or to proficient, would be a pretty big improvement for her classes. All right, last thing we did is we reflected on our meeting. With the reflection, I've noticed, and we've all noticed, that our group camaraderie is very good. Whenever we are frustrated with something, or if whenever we have questions, our group is very quick to answer or to find out what the correct answer would be by looking back at our class notes. Second, it was nice to reflect on data from different points of view. Hearing Angela, hearing Christopher, hearing Noel's opinions about my data is very interesting, as they don't have the AP experience that I have, or the AP, they haven't gone through the same experiences. And same for me with them. Trying to incorporate my knowledge into their data has been kind of eye-opening. We've also found that it's kind of difficult for us to find a time to meet, as we're only really available during weekdays, afternoons, and we want to make sure we can get all of our stuff in before the end of our weeks. Then we wanted to make sure that we met each other's expectations. And with that being said, we want to make sure that we're all kind of pulling our own weight, and I think we're doing a pretty good job with that. My personal reflection is, as a facilitator, I think I did a pretty decent job. For our group, it's not about one person leading the rest. It's more about just guiding everyone to make sure that we're staying on task and not getting offset with every other, or with any problems we have. Make sure we're just answering each other's questions. All right. Thanks, everyone.